Hello, everybody, and welcome to, what is this? This is Aquarian Radio. And I am Karen, I'm not Karen Christine Patrick. I'm Janet Karen Lessin, and I'm here with Karen Christine Patrick. And if you're confused like I am after being locked down and coronavirus or whatever this is, I've been here a couple months, and so I don't even know what day of the week it is or who I am. But we're going to talk about what's going on in the world from our perspective. And Karen has introduced a new topic called Let's Get Fractical. So I'm going to turn on her mic here because she can't talk unless I turn it on. Okay, Karen Christine Patrick, welcome to Aquarian Radio. And we're going to talk about Let's Get Fractical, which is your concept that you gave to us. So I'm going to let you talk about it and explain it to our listeners.
Well, it's nice to be back on Aquarian Radio. Janet Carol Lessin. Just so we know,
yes,
it's that kind of time, right?
Yes.
Who's who, what's what day is it?
Yeah. It's all blending into one big fog.
I can't believe people could count how many days they were in quarantine because, man, I don't even, it's like, it's all run together for me.
Well, some of them keep track. I saw a thing from Cuomo this morning, and I didn't delve into it, but it just said, today is Saturday, and that was it.
Yeah, just in case you needed to know.
I think he screwed up. He was going to come on and do a thing, but then he realized, today's Saturday. I don't do it on Saturday. So all it was a real brief thing. Today is Saturday. Okay. Go back to your life, whatever that means.
Yeah.
So what does this mean to you? This current state. I don't sleep very well. I have all these strange dreams, and then I thought it was just me, and then I saw an article yesterday that says people that are locked down in this coronavirus, COVID-19 situation are having very, very strange dreams because normally our psyche gets filled with the activities of the day, right? You go to work, you go to the store, and so your subconscious has more to work with. And now that we don't have so much input, so much interaction, we're left with ourselves. And our subconscious in a dream state just tries to fill it in with, and it's going further and further back in time. Like this one fellow said, I dreamed last night that Ronald Reagan took me to the comic store, and he swiped his card and told the clerk, let him buy whatever he wants, and then he left. So he said he went back to his childhood, he went back to Ronald Reagan was the president, and then, the dream unfolded. So that's kind of what's happening to me the other day, but I'm not going to go into the dream, but I went back to, like, one of the most critical incidents in my life was Star Trek, when Star Trek premiered when I was 12 years old. But how does this tie into this fractal, which is a word, Karen loves to make up words.
I know.
Go ahead and tell her listeners. Yeah, it's a thing she does, and I love it because it shows that she's a deep thinker.
Or just real quippy. I've kind of that kind of word is a combo of fractal, like in math. Sometimes people see in a fractal equation or a fractal image or geometry, and practical. And I call it a mashup. It's like the technical term is called a portmanteau, and you get like you've heard the word craptacular. So craptacular is kind of the same. That's kind of a craptacular type of time, really.
Right.
Exactly. It's spectacularly crappy out there for everybody. So, yeah, I think I've been through some of the same emotions of everybody, but I've had a peculiar life situation that's happened to me my whole life. Is I run sort of energetically 1 to 2 years before everyone else. I am your canary in the coal mine kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
And by
way
of introduction of that, I know exactly where I was on 9/11. On 9/11, I had been 6 days in a women's shelter, and I had a personal terrorist, right? And all of a sudden, we had a whole, nation terrorism concept. And I mean, it was like the things that I had to do to deal with the sort of deviousness of all that and insidiousness of all that was suddenly where everyone else was at. Being reminded that there's people that really think on a different scale, whether you think 9/11 was an inside job or whether you think it was terrorism. It was a situation where somebody had some intention for evil, and evil happened, and it was pretty bad.
Right.
We're losing just as many people now in the United States every day than we are, that 9/11 day, right? So the canary in the coal mine experience, of this time was that I did not have good words for what I went through this last year and a half or so, especially of dealing. I told people I was dealing with health stuff, but another aspect, which is true, but another aspect of that was that I finally got a term for it. It was empathic distancing. So there's social distancing, and I was having empathic distancing. And what I mean by that is, I'm a psychic person, but I'm more strongly an empath. And I've used that for years and years in being a family caregiver. I literally knew if someone couldn't talk, I could actually sort of know what they needed without them saying anything. It's been a thing. And in the last year and a half, I've been very dismayed at where we were all heading. So if it's the idea that we're going to go back to normal, do we really want to go back to the normal that we thought was normal?
That good. Yeah. Let me add a couple things what you just said. Let me try something in what you just said. Okay, first of all, we lost today 2,079 people. So I think the Twin Towers was about 3,000 something people. So yeah, we're losing a lot of people every day. Hopefully that'll start slowing down. But we don't have a very good recovery rate compared to the rest of the world. We have, someone said the stats are down. So this site will be up tomorrow. But what they've had to do is revamp the stats because they realized, like in New York, they had 4,000 more dead than they were, So I think with the end of this, we're not going to really know exactly how many people died because of this. But, because there's people that are not getting their surgeries they would have received had they not been, brushed aside because of the COVID, right? So people are sick every day. But now with the COVID situation, they're not getting to get their surgery or their whatever they're supposed
medical
to get.
Treatment.
Medical treatment. And so they are in the fatality count as well. But one last thing, and I'll go back to you. Right before 9/11, I was sick. And, these COVID coronaviruses have been going around, I think, for years, very severe virus. So I was sick, and I was, I literally, I shat the bed a couple times. It was so embarrassing. My husband came up, and he said, "Do you want to go to the hospital?" And I said, no, I'm working through something. There's something going on. I'm working through it. So I was in bed, really severely sick for about 3 days. And then all of a sudden, the fever broke. And I got up out of bed, and I was all alone. And we had company at our place. And I had dismissed myself just to go be in a coma. And anyway, I come downstairs, and all we had in those days was a little tiny black and white TV. And all my company, they're in the office. They turned this little TV on, and they're all watching the Twin Towers do its Groundhog Day thing, where it kept going over and over, it's being blown up and falling down. And then I said, oh, well, I wish somebody would have woken me up because it's the end of the world, right? I didn't say let me sleep through the end of the world. At least let me wake up long enough to realize it's the end of the world. And then they were so fascinated with what was going on, I just went into my office and I turned on the computer and I watched it on my computer. And I said, I knew right away, instantly. I said, oh, they finally did it. Because I was raised going to these conspiracy things. So I knew this was an inside job, that it wasn't some, whoever they were blaming it on, I said, no, that's just the phone guy. This was done by the United States because they want to do the depopulation bomb. They want to depopulate. So you have a similar background. I was raised by kind of like, they were normal when I was a child, but when I got to my teen years, my parents became evangelists, both of them. Two different cults, but they were in these evangelistic cults. And you poor thing, you were raised in it. I at least escaped my early years. But that's why I go into conspiracy right away. I go, no, this is conspiracy. And so from my perspective, this COVID-19 is part of that Agenda 21 where they want to take us down to, 500 million or whatever the number is. And they might have a 20-year plan on doing this, but I don't know. It looks like about 5 to 10% of the world's population might die from this thing. But back to you, your perspective.
Well, yeah, that was good that you brought that up. I appreciate it because, I was raised in a kind of a double threat situation because it was both the cult that I was in, which was a Christianity philosophy, so it was, the not necessarily the rapture, but that sort of thing. And they didn't call it that. And the other part of that was the political stuff. So it was right-wing political type stuff. And, I had been in that since I was 6 weeks old, It took me a long time to leave the situation and because, the second generation is in a different position than the ones that say, let's say, converted to that. You don't know any other reality. And then and then it took quite a bit longer to get it all out of me. You get the girl out of the church, but get the church out of the girl. It took me a while to go back and back and back through where all these belief systems came from. And part of why I sort of have a sense of this is because I've done all this, I'm trying to understand where do these ideas come from. And but I think I land on a different square in sometimes in conspiracy stuff for a couple of reasons. I think one of the missing pieces, and I got to give you and Sasha some credit, was the Anunnaki story because that to me sets the tone for the whole reason why we have a setup like we do in the first place of government and all that, and basically the idea of hierarchy, whether it's a hierarchy of the government or a hierarchy of religion or a hierarchy of politics, or I'll tell this one lady I know is kind of explaining this top-down pyramidic hierarchy concept, and this lady was from Texas, and she says, well, that's just like my knitting club. We were arguing who was going to be the leader of the club, and we almost stabbed each other with our knitting needles. And I just, exactly right. It doesn't matter how small of a group it is. They're kind of this trying to decide who the leader is, and if you don't have that in place, then somehow things won't be done right. It's a bigger, it's a more comprehensive concept that I glommed onto a while back, and it's still been useful for me to understand things. So the conspiracy world, right now has been erupting of where did this thing start, et cetera, and, it was in a lab, it was Bill Gates, it was this and that. And I'm not going to say whether that is so or not, except to say that might have been the beginning. But you don't get a pandemic from a germ. You get a pandemic from vulnerability of people's immune system. You get a pandemic from inability for people to get clean and healthy, get off the streets, get out of the way of the thing. You get that from for-profit, in my opinion, for-profit healthcare, or rationed healthcare would be another way to put it. The living conditions of lots and lots of people is not the type of thing that would make it easy to stay out of this thing's way. There's more going on. Oh, yeah, the toxins
in the environment, all the toxins. They're finding that the more black and brown people are dying, but they tend to have the factories in the neighborhoods. So these are the disposable people that, get to work in the factories, but they have short lives, and their general population is more weak with compromised immune systems. So when you have something like this going around, they are the ones most likely to die. Yeah, I was listening to somebody, one of the talk show hosts, it might have been Cuomo or something, and he was tracking down that, we have this story that it came from China, but I came across another one where there were cases in Northern California, in the Bay Area and Santa Clara area, and they do the genome sequencing on these, the blood that they get from the people that have recovered. And that's European. So by mid-February, we were already infected from the European strain. And the European strain apparently had mutated once it left China. But then this person said, no, we're getting evidence that it's been in the United States since October. So how do these things transmit? Why are some people so susceptible you just have to walk in a room after somebody was in there, and other people don't get a sniffle? But then there's some people that are, like, there's a beautiful young lady the other day, her husband goes to work, she's only in her maybe early 30s, he comes home, she's flat dead on the floor. She didn't even have any symptoms. And so it was, so we have a lot to look at here.
Yeah,
I'll pass it back to you. That was just adding my 2 cents there. This whole stuff boggles my mind, because I go to, how are we ever going to resolve this? They're saying it's in bats. Well, bats are all over the world. When I was a kid, we used to come home from playing. We had to wear these caps on our head because there was these little bats that like to dive bomb us. If you were coming home at dusk, they would see the kids walking home, and they'd go, boom, and they'd hit you on your head, boom. So bats are everywhere. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Otherwise, we'd be overrun with insects, though. We'd be overrun with insects, though. I don't like to always blame the natural world. It might have been something the bats had. Like I said, the origin part is not, I'm not an epidemiologist. I can't speak to it, but there's a lot to process, and it just seems like, like at our house where we do COVID COVID broadcasting for like an hour or two, and then we get COVIDed out, and then have to go to something else.
Yeah.
There's so much to process, but so when I say I'm kind of running ahead of the curve, like I said, I kind of unplugged from everything, and I realize now, looking back, that it was because my feeling of impending disaster has been on a while, was not anything real specific. It was more of a sense of that the way we've been going is not sustainable as a society, and also that society didn't look like it was in any way, shape, or form to begin to process what's going on. And I have to talk about my dad. He was a dad. Dad do dad jokes. This is my dad's stupid dad jokes. But if I stubbed my toe on something or whatever, he'd go, I didn't feel nothing, and I just kind of want to smack him. But that was it. And he was making a point, is that whatever happens to you, but that doesn't mean somebody else is having the same experience, I guess, and is sympathetic, because it wasn't their damn toe, And so that's the thing is that that's been the problem, is that we've had whole populations of people suffering under the wealth inequality and all these things that we just talked about. And yet the leadership level and the sort of what I call the muddle class, you know, the ones that just go about their business, didn't have any incentive to give a shit. And that was disturbing to me. And so I was kind of like, what, you know, trying to figure out what
is unsustainable. So you have a pyramidal system. We're always in the pyramid scheme, right? You have the uber ultra rich, the royals, the monarchs, the presidents and czars and CEOs and Bezos and other people like that in the planet. They exist because they're vampiric and they're hoarding and they're mentally ill. You know, they're greedy, and they exist because they have this large base of humanity to pull from. You know, we're being sucked and we're all working slaves, and when I was born, believe it or not, there was only about 3 billion people. So what is our number today? We're approaching 8 billion. We have, look at the population today. Population of the world today.
A lot.
A lot. It's like 7.5 billion, something like that. Okay, 7.594. Oh, that's 2018. What is 2019? That's not good. Update.
Well,
yeah, okay, 7.5 billion. So, yeah, we don't know who people are across the world, but now we're starting to travel more. Now we can make friends with somebody in China on our Facebook or whatever the government's allow. We can meet people from all over the world. So I talk to a lot of people from all over the world because I do radio, and they find me. But, you know, I have those Czech friends, the girls that you met, right? So if somebody doesn't speak the same language, but, you know, we're having conversations, and but that's how it used to be. You could demonize another country, people in other countries, and make them the boogeyman. We're always making the boogeyman. And let's go to war against them, or at least we're not going to worry about if they're getting killed. We're not going to worry about our family, our friends, or whatever. So we get so desensitized to people dying. And so that was a problem. So you and I knew that. Like, I knew something was going to happen in 2020. And on some level, we will look back and go, this was a really good thing. Even though a lot of people died, which is always a bad thing, but it shifted the world, and we came out the other side. I mean, I'm hoping that. I can't really wrap my head around.
It's a crisis.
It's
and the Chinese character for crisis is danger plus opportunity.
Mhm.
And that's what we've got. We've got a dangerous situation, but it is an opportunity. I mean, so they kind of want to go back into the fractal, what I'm on about.
Go ahead.
So yeah, this I have to say, so 9/11, I was in the women's shelter, and I had, you know, really difficult circumstances that and the year before I was in the women's shelter, I was dealing with this person coming unglued that was threatening me, my ex-husband. And it was like, all through my life, it seemed like if I picked, you know, if it's a Akashic record kind of thing, and I picked this path I was going to go on, I didn't exactly pick the easy one. At the time, it made all that more difficult for me. My youngest child was born disabled in a wheelchair, so going crisis to crisis to crisis would have made me familiar with what we're in right now. Other people may not have actually had you know, one crisis after another. And during my tenure of taking care of my daughter, who's now cared for in an adult family home, and I've, you know, in contact with her and want to send her some, or care people some masks and stuff. So I've got a lot of that on my mind. She's in a care center, and right now, so far, they're doing okay. Hello?
Hi. I had to switch to my headphone because my speaker because my headphone died. So she's in a care facility and they don't have any cases? in her facility?
No, not right now. It's a small place. But I'm just saying what I was doing was now they're taking care of her because I can't anymore because I became disabled myself, picking her up and hauling her around for 20 years. I hurt myself. So I'm kind of like, I've been through. I'm getting a lot of echoes, so I'll just plow on through. I've just been getting like one thing after another, and so when we got to this point in the Corona cha-cha, it's basically that there's this sort of initial, oh, what the hell is this? Oh, my gosh, what is it? And then there's orders. Hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then there's the boring part. And the longer all that goes on, the more, and I mean boring of just you're complying with whatever instructions that you've been given and somewhat on shutdown. The thing that dawns on, is probably dawning on a lot of people as it has me, is that we're not going to go back to whatever it was that we thought normal was. And that feels really familiar to me because each of these things that I experienced, they used to be really frustrating. It's like now I kind of have a map of how to deal with things in these given circumstances, and the realization that whatever you thought was normal is not, and that's what I kind of was thinking about in anticipation of talking about all of this. Also, if you have a significant crisis.
You created, Karen. You didn't like the normal, so we're not going back to it. You're very magical.
No, I thought, normal was not working for a lot of people, and it was working for less and less people, and we sort of got consequences for that. We got consequences, nature. Brett and I are nature people. We think nature always wins. We got natural consequences. I know people think, oh, it's a natural virus and blah, blah, blah. Listen, if it would have been a virus that had happened 1,000 years ago, like Black Plague or something, we would be in a similar situation because a lot of what made the Black Death so terrible was the living conditions of people and how they had structured society with a lot of poverty. So some of the same things were like the preamble or the prequel to something like this.
Right.
And sustainability, this is a result of not paying attention to that the way we live needs to be in balance and sustainable, and society literally came about from dealing with hygiene problems. If you build a village or a city, you're going to need to create some kind of way to deal with illnesses, to deal with your trash, to deal with your the bathrooming issues, or your city or town or village or whatever is not going to last very long. So just even people organizing themselves in a household or in a village or in a town or a city.
That's a very important subject because they're saying it's going over to India. They have too many people. It's too close. That's going to be a disaster. So I guess if we were to survive this and come out the other side, we have to think, how are we going to do this differently so this won't happen again? And so how many people, how do we do our villages? How many people? How do we keep the air pure? How do we keep the population? And right now they're all saying get the vaccines, but other people are saying, well, if you get the vaccine, you're going to become basically Borg. They're going to pull you into the singularity, and you're going to be AI. You're no longer going to be yourself. So there's all these stories around where we are and where we're going. But realistically, how are we going to organize our future cities so they won't get a virus and it goes rapidly through the whole population like it does in New York? Poor New York. They were such an incredible that was such an incredible creation, but the center of the virus in the United States is New York City, the densest city. But for some reason, LA has some cases, but they were more on top of it or something. Back to you.
Oh, they're more spread out, which does help. Well, okay, so let's get into the being practical part. So it's kind of a micro macro set of issues going on. What I wanted to talk about. So we're enmeshed in our personal whatever it is we're trying to do to live and be safe and keep our family safe and survive and whatever, as well as we're all going through this together on the entire planet, which is kind of interesting all by itself. This is a global situation, which is pointing out global weaknesses. And viruses, however they're started, they're opportunistic. They are waiting for an opening, and they know how to get into that opening and replicate themselves and all that. So that's nature. That's a natural thing. Whether this was tweaked by some sort of technology or not, it's still based in nature. So in the concept of the fractal, this is why I say that. A fractal is something, it's a construct in mathematics, and it's the name for equations that are used in modeling, so like computer-generated games and stuff, improved a lot because of the algorithm of fractal geometry. And it's modeling that mirrors how nature kind of constructs things, which is self-similarity. So it's whatever the scale of something, it goes all the way up from the galaxy is not unsimilar from a molecule. That's the concept, is that it's self-similarity or similarity through the scales. So it's talking about our individual situations, looking at our individual situations, looking at it as it scales up to humanity. And so one of the esoteric principles behind this is as above, so below, as within, so without. And I came up with as a human, so humanity. So as a human being has its life and its situations and everything, that scales all the way in terms of trying to understand informationally and socially what's going on. So since we can go right to the planetary history level and extraplanetary history level, civilization, and we see this on Earth with, looking at the past, how cities that used to be there are now just desert and everything. There, a group, a collective, a civilization goes through its birth, through its infancy, through its thriving and replicating and growing to its demise. And that's the same scale as what a human being individually goes through. So we're kind of, I hope we're not watching our civilization die, but, we can't keep breaking the rules of nature and not expect some to get spanked, basically, if you believe in Mother Nature or an intelligence within nature. And we've been out of balance, and we've all been sent to, I think on the last show I was with, we've all been sent to our rooms to think about what we've done. It's kind of a thing where we are all now thinking about the same kinds of things, which, trust me, you and I both know that the stuff we talk about and what we think about is not something that very many people are thinking about it at all. In fact, I dare say people with very busy lives probably have never seen how the government was functioning or been very political or even noticed what the government was doing in general, let alone in response to this situation. I'm sure it's quite shocking for some people to kind of have to stop and deal and look and realize that our, let's say, United States, we had this thing called a stockpile, and I found this out through an alert that they put out through New Mexico. And we're supposed to have all this medical equipment and masks and gloves for our healthcare providers, and they put out an alert in New Mexico saying that they're supposed to have, I guess, individual states have a certain batch of stuff within that stockpile, and New Mexico made its request, and they got back 25% of what they asked for, so 25% ventilators, masks, and gloves and stuff, and it was all moth-eaten and gross. So they've been putting money and sending money to the federal government to allocate for the stockpile, and they literally haven't been looking to see if things expired or not, because there is an expiration date, or whether something had dry rot in the paper stuff that they have for paper gowns and stuff, or if rats or anything got into it. So at some point we're going to need to look into that whole stockpile situation and go, okay, we've been giving money to the stockpile thing, but that apparently has not been upgrading what was in there. What happened? Where did the money get siphoned off to?
It seems like our federal government is into stealing from the people, right? So here's the states, and the people are investing into their stockpile in case there's an emergency, believing that we have a functioning government, and now we're finding out, nah, it's not very functional.
No. The supplies that we wanted to have for our emergency are not there, and it normally would not have even been an issue because when was the last time we had a pandemic in the United States? Almost exactly 100 years ago. Well, they didn't anticipate. There's been spot things happen here and there, outbreaks and things, but not the whole thing altogether. So that's another thing that will have to be investigated. But so that's the thing, is that this disease or whatever it is, some people even suggested that a given bug has sort of a uber intelligence to it. That's why it's able to mutate and adapt. You should think of it not as one little germ as the individual organization or organisms, but the cell of a larger super intelligence. And it's very intelligently replicating itself very quickly in a situation where we were not prepared to respond to it in a cohesive way.
It seems to be able to mutate and adapt, and there does seem to be an intelligence to it. And so I wonder, is this nanotechnology? So we had our friend Alfred Weber, and he says this is nanotechnology, and it's going to transform us into the transhuman. It's part of the transhumanism movement, and we're going to be structurally changed and Borg. And I go, so I listen to it. I listen to all these things, and it's like, wow. I mean, if that's true, it's kind of scary.
I disagree with that as a complete assessment, because I don't think it. So I'll go in with, you and I've talked in the past about A.R. Borden, and the A.R. Borden went rogue from the clandestine government and was finding people, anyone who listened to him, of what he was sharing, the material that he was getting and working through or generating from his groups. But he talked about something that I thought was really interesting, and he talked about the over function. And so the idea was coming out of a type of physics called idiomaterial physics. And idiomaterial physics is applying to the idea of a hologram. You apply that to all manifest reality, runs on that everything is an energy, it's an information cloud, it's a field, it's a morphogenic field, and including a morphogenetic field. And the idea of the overfunction is that instead of the normal things that we think of in terms of evolution, the evolution takes a really long time and lots of experiences, really long time to adapt. It can adapt quite a bit quicker. I think I've told the story about the barn owls that obviously used to build their nest in the trees, and then the trees got cut down to make barns, so then they just went to where the trees were and began to not be freaked out and nest in those barns made from the same type of tree. They adapted. And the idea of the overfunction is that all the experiences from all the individuals in a particular species sort of aggregate their experiences, what they learn, to this overfunction concept. And the overfunction is the intelligence of the whole species. And then if something is amiss in the life cycle of a particular population, it will adapt because it will have all the information to go, oh, hey, this is going wrong. How do I adapt? And then the adaptations will somehow suddenly come out in mutations of the next generation that's born, or an epigenetic type change. And epigenetics is interesting because it can account for a much quicker adaptation process. And so that's what's going on, is that this COVID thing, naturally is, there's been pandemics for thousands of years off and on. And this overfunction of this type of a virus itself has a consciousness and an intelligence. But that means we do too.
Right.
And so in concept of a fractal, it means that the ability for an individual to learn and try to understand its life goes up to this overfunction, which is the higher level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So any given individual might struggle with how it's going to survive, but the whole species will adapt as all the individuals have experiences and send that information back to this information cloud or this consciousness, this natural consequent consciousness. So I
that's
understand.
why you see like you'll have a the cave fish looks like the other fish, but the cave fish has adapted quite rapidly to it becomes a blind cave fish, right? So you see microevolution all the time, and that could be very rapid. But why Neil Freer and Sasha were saying that was evidence of interventionism, because there wasn't enough time for macro evolution, which was a theory, but things evolved nevertheless. So there must be some kind of interventionism. Anyway.
Yeah, micro evolutionary processes besides the macro one.
Yeah, micro
exactly.
And macro. Yeah.
So that's literally what I'm. Yeah, that's literally what I'm talking about. This fractal kind of concept here. And so now, what is the concept of as above, so below was written in the Emerald Tablet by Thoti. I call him Thoti, or Hermes Trismegistus, or there's a bunch of different names for this guy who wrote this book. And there's different translations, but I like this one. It says, that which is below is as that which is above, and that which is above is as that which is below, to perform the miracles of the one thing. Now, in some interpretations of that as above, so below, it's kind of that pyramidic top-down command and control concept, that the above is always controlling and dictating to the below. But or the miracle of the one thing, or what he's saying right here, is that the below also influences and contributes to the above. It's a cycle.
Right.
It's a toroidal input, type of thing. And I like that, because then, so one of the big feelings that you get when you go through a big thing like this is a sense of powerlessness, because you can't go out anymore, you can't go to your job, you can't do anything, you feel really overwhelmed. And that's why I say this feels familiar to me. I've been overwhelmed by circumstances over and over enough to where I get that that's a stage in it. So if you sort of take the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief, it's also the 5 stages of crisis, right? So the whole denial and bargaining and all the different steps there are also in play, is that you go through this process to get from that helpless sort of feeling through some stages of processing to acceptance. And the acceptance in the case of the 5 stages of grief is you accept that your person that you loved is dead. Or if it's stages of grief going with an illness, that you're going to be the one to go of cancer or something. The end result is you look at what's going on with clarity and then adapt to that new normal, right? So I think that everyone's sort of in those same, one of those stages, all kinds of different reactions. You could literally pin it on one of those stages. I'd say to people that say, nothing's going wrong, let's go back to work, they're protesting and all that. They're in the denial phase, I think. Because they're also in denial that things were great. Make things great again. Well, it wasn't that great for everybody, but the people who it wasn't great for were very quiet. They were shouted down and were not able to say much, or were involved in some kind of activism to try to raise consciousness and say, hey, this isn't right for us to have basically our health care, let's start with that, rationed by money.
Well, we kind of get bullied. We kind of get bullied by the top that has the louder voice and the squeakiest wheel, but it doesn't. Just because that's why democracy doesn't work. Just because majority agrees on something doesn't mean it's right, because it's a tendency to overwhelm and not honor and respect everybody's needs and everybody's positions. So somebody gets overwhelmed and they get shouted down and they end up getting bullied. So a lot of us have been bullied by this system.
Yeah, and in the middle, they don't feel it. Like I said, I didn't feel nothing. They don't see why they should go through any changes or adaptations or don't rock the boat or whatever. It's because they're not feeling the same hazard as somebody else. So somebody said today, or one of the posts on Facebook was, we're not all in the same boat. It's easy to think we're all in the same boat because we got this thing rolling around, but there's a big difference between someone going through this who's got a well-stocked house and they're wealthy and they've got any health care that they want versus somebody who's taking care of their loved one who's disabled, or somebody who didn't have enough food in the house, was living paycheck to paycheck and shopping trip by shopping trip. We're not all in the same boat. But we're not in the same boat. A similar threat, definitely a similar threat. And that's an opportunity to go, okay, because this is now rattling everybody's cage. Now everyone has it is affecting them in some way or another. There's not a heck of a lot of people that are completely unaffected or at threat.
Well, it's interesting to see the broadcast that the different talk show hosts have, and you're seeing all these people participating in these news programs, and you see how people live, right? And it's like, wow, some people really have it nice, and some people, it's shocking. Well, you would think it'd be nicer, but some people don't even have a place to broadcast from, right? So the gap is huge. Like right now today, they just said we have our first case of COVID-19 from a homeless shelter, right? So now what are they going to do? These people are homeless. They're finally getting shelter, and now the shelter's infected. So around the whole planet. That's the whole planet's like this. Is that really
right?
easy
But
for the millionaire that's in his mansion, and somebody delivers the food, doesn't have to expose himself, right? Yeah, so stuff's happening. And the inequality is becoming
apparent.
Go ahead.
Very, very. The inequality is becoming apparent. So as you know, when I do stuff, some people are like, well, why would you care about that? Well, so for instance, the basic income situation. I became a supporter of universal health care, although I think we need to talk about what that is. The problems with the healthcare system, but also the basic income is because I've been through these kind of life-altering sets of circumstances, and I recognize how if you don't have a basic human rights universally accessed by people, and you have this all over the map kind of thing. The principle here, and it's so true, like I've said this before, but nobody even listens to anything I say because they're like, oh, what's your problem? You're just a rabble-rouser, you're a troublemaker. No, you do.
They listen to Karen.
But I've been feeling really isolated in that concern. But anyway, they say, well, I've got, like Brett and I have just made about people, I've got mine, why should I care about someone over there? Well, the thing is if you've got yours, quote unquote, you've got yours, but you don't make sure that someone else has theirs, yours is not safe. Got to make sure there's kind of a basic societal norm that's understood, a universality to it. Because if you have a bunch of people and they're okay, how long is that going to last? How long is it going to last for you to have yours if somebody who doesn't have theirs knows you've got yours? Let's just start there. I'll let people chew on that for a minute. We've got to make sure everybody has a basic thing they can rely on, that they can build on. And that's why I've been saying that. I've been saying that if you don't make sure people have what they need, it's a risk to everybody. And I don't think you could have had most people even understand what I'm saying till we got to this point. I don't care if they're up in a penthouse at the top of New York City. They're in New York City. They're in a hot zone, all right? So that is affecting those guys at the top just like it is the people that we're sleeping on the street. We're all human. We're all breathing together. We have the same air. We occupy we cross over the same spaces. And because the ones that are at the top did not make sure that the people at the bottom were okay, now theirs is at risk. And that's kind of what I'm talking about.
See that even more. Because we're sitting here going, well, it's over in China, it's over in India, but we're going to start seeing the third world countries where they have no checks and balances, where it's just going to run rampant, and we're going to start seeing millions of people dying here. So I watched the other day about what's going on in India, and it's just going to run through the whole population, just like in Italy. And now it's in the United States. It's not done here. It's not done here by any means. But they're going to open it up because they're impatient. And so that's why I go back to conspiracy. Somebody wants a large part of the population to die. Somebody really wants to see this happen on a large level.
Yeah, the super intelligence of the thing itself. And, so we can talk about the intentions of certain people. And growing up with the conspiracy stuff that I was hearing, and my parents, they talk over the top of kids and they don't think we understand what's going on. But I did. I was kind of odd that way. I was listening. So I had to, so it was like, Jesus is going to come soon, and or there's going to be a tribulation, we're going to all die, or the commies are going to come and kill us all. I had to come to terms with this starting at 4 or 5 years of age when I was realizing what they were telling me. I remember sitting in church listening. I wasn't feeling well, so I was sitting next to my mom, and they were talking about the Fox Book of Martyrs, and that's how all the martyrs died back in history. So I was like, they didn't, I was just coloring, and they didn't think I understood it. I freaking understood it, but what can I do? I'm just a little kid. I was just listening, and it got in there, and it messed with my head for a long time. I had to finally come to terms when I was about 12 years old that, okay, so this is the intentions of the darklings. I call them the darklings.
Right.
That's what they have intent for, to do me harm. Now what? Okay, until whatever it is they do happens, I still got to live. I can't live as a kid and try to get a career and try to grow up. And, so I literally was convinced at about 12 that I wasn't going to grow up at all. I really was convinced. I didn't expect to. And I'm a grandma. So if I would have, kept on feeding into that, and I know some people are at the beginning of their conspiracy awakening, and they're like, oh my God, yeah, these guys really mean it. Yeah, they do. I don't want to downplay it at all. It's just that you can't live in that. It's paralyzing.
Well, you have to be in the moment. You can't, what is it? A hero dies one death, and a fool dies 1,000 deaths. Because then every day you're dying, right? It's like, oh my God, I'm going to die today. So you got to live while you're alive, and we have no control, and yet we have all the control. On some level, we're creating this, and if we get down to the level of, manifesting and pulling it into some kind of, how do we want to see this happen? And I've been experimenting with that, and you did too.
Oh yeah.
You did, the show. You said, I don't want us to go back to normal. Well, on some level, it's not going to go back to normal because on some level, Karen doesn't want to. It's really hard to wrap your head around it.
Normal sucks for myself and other people. Normal was hard. Normal was to give you an idea what my normal was me trying to get respite care and just be right when I applied for it to get some help at home because I'm literally completely exhausted. I'm getting up, several times at night with my daughter. I'm grinding my teeth. I'm breaking my back teeth. It was rough. And then I said, okay, they have this respite care program. I'm going to apply for that. And as soon as I applied for it, they shut it off. The state stopped it. And, stuff like that happened to me off and on. I would get these, I think I had help for breaks and things like that too, but the system was like, oh, you caregivers can just go on and on and on and do a 24/7 job with no breaks, and we'll just pat you on the back and say, yay, caregivers, but they barely even do that. I mean, so part of my, consciousness right now is what current caregivers are going through in trying to take care of a loved one in a situation like this. My heart is right there. I know. I've been to this where resources are crazy, and you can't. You have someone that has to be at the doctor because they've got some unusual situation, and now all the resources are for this thing, and you can't make those appointments, and you're exhausted and you're tired, and now you can't take that person out, or something a lot of caregivers got was daycare. That's gone. Where you can drop your person off for a couple of hours and just get a break. That's gone, So I'm feeling that, but it's like what I want to say is normal for a lot of people has not been working. So I don't know if we create it, but I know that it was created. It was created in the sense of if you don't, we're giving ourselves consequences for this as a society on the society level, on the collective level. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to quickly go to practical because that's the other half of the word practical. Let's get practical. Practical. So so what you do when you're the person is you'll have all your emotions, you'll have all your reactions. It'll range from I'm going to use this time to better myself to, I saw this on a Facebook thing and it cracked me up. I'm going to use this time to improve myself. And another person is, I ate carrot cake with my fingers, there's kind of the two different kinds of reactions, just complete breakdown of your norm. And, the practical sense is as you deal with processing not just your emotions, but how are you going to do things? Almost everything you're trying to do is different. Is that you do eventually have to get very practical with a situation like this. So Brett is my partner. He's another person who's been through a lot. And the first thing we did was we started thinking, okay, what can we do to improve our situation to get through this? And we anticipate, it's already the case, that it's going to be, I can't go in the store at all, I've got health issues. So we expect to see there's going to be a disruption in supply line. So one thing that would be hard to get is fresh vegetables. It's a little bit early to be planting in the garden, but we got some cold tolerant greens out right away. So that took some effort to get that going. So we picked some practical goals, and that was one of them. Mine was like organizing our supplies and figuring out where everything is and that sort of thing. So, take an action step. And this is what I would say if someone's kind of paralyzed. So I do know about the deer in the headlights feeling that you have is like, so every day he tells me, I'm going to go do this thing. And I tell him, I'm going to go do this thing. So we pick one sort of practical thing to do. And the more of that you can do, you don't want to beat yourself up if you that's hard, because some of the things that you normally would try to do, you can't do, you have to do differently. Yeah. I find myself mentally really tired at the end of the day because I've had to think of an alternative way to do something versus the way I would normally do something, and that kind of change of habit is exhausting. It's really exhausting because we're creatures of habit. We run on automatic. If we get up and we do this and make our coffee, and it's like, oh, I've got to be careful how I make my coffee because I can't afford to dump any down the sink because now it's hard to get. Or, I can't run out and get all the stuff like toothpaste and things like that. So maybe what could I do instead if I'm going to run out? So you try to anticipate some things. But that's something I really encourage people to do. And that's why I'm kind of like parting company a bit with the conspiracy thing, because whether that's true or not, my concern is putting people in the deer in the headlights thing. So the other part is if it's out there and I can't do anything about it, I don't need to necessarily be paralyzed by that fear. Okay.
Right.
I need to also can't do what I can do, and know this. So in that thing which it said, as that which is below can influence that which is above, when we take an action step, when we do something about our situation, it's easy for us to make some masks and give it to the neighbors. Like, I've been making masks. I've been giving some of those to people I know and the neighbors. And Brett's been not just growing vegetables for himself, but also helping the neighbors get in that garden too. In other words, you find that you can actually really help the situation. Once you've kind of conquered a particular task, you can help somebody else. But even if you're only taking care of yourself, that's okay too, because at least you're not causing the system to have to deal with you as it's trying to deal with everything else. So an action step is really, really important, you know?
Yeah, the cure for depression or negative emotions is activity and expression. And so I'm reminded also, my husband is a war baby. He's not a baby boomer, he's a war baby. So when he was a child, World War II was in full swing. And they had the victory gardens. And so in his neighborhood, in Torrance, California, they had the victory gardens. So one neighbor, they were kind of out in the outskirts. Torrance was just developing, and so they were in one of the, housing development things. So they had a little bit of space. So the one neighbor got chickens, and the other neighbor got pigs, and the other neighbor grew. So the neighborhood in each yard, because it wasn't a huge garden, but each yard made, individual gardens, and they all specialized, and then they would trade with each other. Because back in those days, and I don't know if we'll get to the same thing, but it's interesting to look at how history managed situations like this. They had food shortages. So we just had a pig slaughtering place close because they were all infected with COVID, and a beef processing place. Now, I don't know what they'll do. They'll probably get them back up and running again, but they closed for now, so we don't know. The supplies are getting interrupted. So they used to have stamps you could only buy, and some lady said it. They go, what are we going to do? Go to the store, and they're going to say, well, how many people in your family? 5. Well, you can only get 5 pork chops, right? There might be some rationing like that coming down the line if we continue the way we're going. And this is why it's advantageous.
Well, that's food stamps. That's where food stamps came from. That's exactly where food stamps came from.
But this is specific. You can only buy a dozen eggs. You can only buy a gallon of milk, right? So now you're rationing, and you're in your family, and you're going to into, well, you can only have a half a glass of milk today, honey. I'm sorry, you can't have, a quart, right? So that's how it was before. And I'll have to interview him and see how it really was. I'm filling in the blanks with what he told me, but I haven't had a lengthy conversation. And everybody else I know from the war generation, they're pretty much gone, right? My parents are gone. They were World War II people. My dad was overseas. He didn't know what was going on here. My mom was home. I know, being raised by, June, she was traumatized. She was traumatized by the rationing. She was traumatized by the shortages. And we're a spoiled society, and we haven't really encountered it yet. But when you think in terms of yourself and the parent other, and what are you going to do? So this pandemic and exposing yourself and keep exposing, we're never going to get out of this. And, of course, the food chain is going to shut down. So what one individual does affect the collective. We are one human family, and we need to start thinking. But I have been able to separate what is real, what is propaganda, what's really going on here, because I don't control the narrative. Some power that be, which goes back to when we were kids and conspiracy, what is really going on here? And right now, the media and all the information is being controlled by the powers that be. All we have is ourselves, sitting here speculating. But we're so discombobulated because we're all in root survival mode. This is brilliant. When you think of it in terms of writing a movie and how do you take over the planet, a pandemic is the perfect scenario, right? You can always put this into a screenplay. Here's the evil empire, and we're going to control the human population. We're going to take over, and we're going to put this virus, and they're all going to be, nobody's going to be able to compare notes and figure it out.
We're in the middle of the disaster movie, and if we're watching movies, I'm like, I relate to when we watch a movie about a disaster versus watching a movie about some person with, middle class problems. That Susie didn't get to be the prom queen kind of stuff. I can't even relate to right now.
Oh, we're going to long for those days. Remember when we were so upset because we didn't get the date we wanted? Oh my God, poor them.
No, well, like you brought up a good point. What do we believe? And that is, the first thing out the window is the truth. And the proper response from the government level, there is only one proper response, and that is transparency. They need to quit politicizing or, giving us a narrative that isn't realistic, and being transparent, and don't hold your breath on that. But what I wanted to say in response to what you said is what is going on in your life right now is the truth. That's the truth you need to focus on. And in your neighborhood and in your town. The outside seeing, you can armchair quarterback that to a certain extent. But what you see right around you is the truth that is important to focus on, because some of these things are just out of our control. And that's part of why, like I said, we'll watch the COVID channel, for a while, and then you have to stop and deal with the practicality of what do we do in response to whatever it is that we're hearing. And that's
you're
important.
In a similar situation like I am, because you're in your neighborhood. So you're in a town that's pretty remote. You have a tiny plane to get there. Everything's a 2-3 hour drive, right? And I was in that situation when I lived in State College. So now I go from a place where it's a 3-hour drive for the trucks to get in with food and stuff, and I moved to an island, which is most of our food comes in on the barge, which has been absurd. And we've been looking at it as a population going, why aren't we growing more food? And the whole island was, the agriculture was taken over by things like pineapple, right?
Yeah.
And pineapple destroys the soil. I mean, we've allowed people to rape our soil for years in the name of money and profit. And then finally, and then Monsanto was in here testing their GMOs, and so finally our population revolted, and there was this all. They were taking out they had cane. They had sugar. Horrible. We had sugar everywhere, right? So we finally got rid of sugar. We don't need to produce sugar on Maui. So that finally got, and then they started saying we're going to make lots of farms and have group farms and group gardens, and now we have a pandemic. I don't know where that went to, but we definitely did not get our food in there, and we could have more than enough food to feed this island and then some. But it was always mañana, tomorrow. We could do that tomorrow. We can do that down the line. We can do that in 3 years. No, we needed to do that as a landlocked community that you can't get anywhere besides a boat. We need to be self-sufficient. And so I don't know what's going to happen now. I mean, all the islands are that way. And, we were trusting in this global, situation. The same with the masks and the ventilators. Oh, we'll get them from China. Why did we outsource everything to the point where we can't even make the basic things that we need in our own country? The United States is a huge country, and we didn't save one plant to make masks. We didn't anticipate this. We've known about pandemics for 100 years. We've seen many pandemics, but we had a good administration in place. Apparently, there was the H1N1. That didn't go to this level. And we had the, the one that comes, Ebola, right? And neither of those went to this level because we had someone on top of it. We had an organization. We need a world organization that keeps looking at these potentials and monitoring labs and monitoring populations when they get these viruses and monitoring it, to the point where as soon as it happens anywhere in the world, the whole team is on it like flies on shit, and they're taking care of it so it doesn't go past where it originates from. So what is going on? This is what I'm hoping, my wish list for after the pandemic. One of my guests said about 2 months ago, this is going to be known as the BC, before Corona, Corona, and AC, after Corona, just like the Bible, right? So we're right now in Corona. We're in Corona. Now,
in the middle of it,
How long would it take for Corona to be over? Yeah, and is it going to ever be over?
So jumping to the talking to aliens part, which is something you and I have the opportunity to check with them. How do they handle things like that? How did they handle things like that? So just the backstory, what people don't know or about me, but maybe others don't, is that in 2009 I've been journaling for a long time as part of my process of dealing with all kinds of things, but my journaling became kind of a Q&A back and forth with a group of a species, not from another planet, and they're kind of past the level. They used to be like we are, but they're past that level now. And they were, telling me about this problem with hierarchical thinking in terms of, why I glommed onto the word fractal was because they were saying, and I didn't believe them. I did not believe this is even possible. I haven't up until now believed that we have been a fractional society, and we're going to go to a fractal society. So when you were talking about people having gardens during the war efforts and stuff, what's going on? And every time I cough, I feel very subconscious now. That I have a little bit of asthma, so that's why I'm coughing. I don't have anything. You can't get it through the radio, right? I'm okay. Is that the idea of fractional? And they literally did this. I recently saw a video that was talking about how wealth inequality, what it really looks like. And you have a pie, and they're going to divide the pieces up and allocate the pieces of the pie. And then when they did it by the actual numbers of where wealth inequality is right now, the 1% gets 9/10 of the pie. And everybody else shares the remaining piece. And, of course, the further down in the economic level you might just get a couple of crumbs. And then I like that the person had a sense of humor. You get the bill down at the bottom. You have to pay the bill, but you only got a couple crumbs. I like those illustrations, and by the numbers, that is quite true. That's a pyramidic, that's a fractional. We have a fractional reserve banking system. We do things by fractions. You get this, and there's no more, Whereas a fractal means that every single unit within a group is itself, it's a part, but it's also its whole thing. Fractal means you make more pie. Fractal means that everyone's making pie. You don't make it dependent on one person making the pie and another group distributes it, and then you're just sitting there waiting with your empty plate. It doesn't work that way. We have constructed our society on a fractional basis, on a pyramidal basis. And the wealth is literally aggregated all the way to the top, like there's a big vacuum on. It's been running this whole time, and if we're coming up short on the things we need, it's because we never questioned the wisdom of that type of system. So you were talking about pineapples and sugarcane and all that. Those are monocrops. Monocrops are how we do our big, gigantic systems, these complicated systems of making stuff and then distributing stuff is part of the problem, because it was dependent on everything running smoothly all the time. And it doesn't. Nature doesn't do it that way. One of the things that we adapted in our gardening thing is we grow more greens. We literally grow like a Depression era home garden, because we had a garden with all kinds of fancy stuff, and not real fancy, but tomatoes and peppers and squash and everything. right at harvest time, we had a horrific hailstorm, and our garden. I mean, we had like marble-sized hail, everything else, and we went, oh, so what survived was stuff that was already pretty mature, like that wasn't too fragile and fussy, and greens. Anything that we grew, turnip greens, radish greens, all that kind of stuff. So now we grow greens, like more of percentage of that, and then a few experimental type things, but basic stuff, because we learned, and we'll get our tomatoes or peppers or something like that from the store, because now we're going to have to rethink that. But the point is we're now in a different mindset. We're going to say we might have to provide the bulk of anything fresh veggie wise, for ourselves. So we're changing our thinking. But this is what this thing's going to do. It's going to make us change our thinking.
Right.
I've got a relative who's really all over the idea of permaculture, and permaculture would be that everyone's kind of doing that, or even that chickens, pigs, cows thing you were talking about. And then, keep the whole community in a holistic mindset, trying to provide as much as you can, and not have to necessarily be dependent on these big systems. The bigger and more complex these systems are, the easier it is for it to be broken. It'll break because it's too fragile, it's too complicated, it's depending. There's too many holes in it. There's too many opportunities for people to quietly rip off resources that everyone else needs, and you don't find out until it's an emergency. We need to have more self-sufficiency or community sufficiency, and we haven't been doing it. And that's part of the problem here, is that we have not been cultivating wholeness, holisticness in individuals and households and in communities, but rather turn all this stuff over to corporations, and corporations do that kind of scale well for a while, but corporations have to have resources to be able to do that. And right now, the immediate one is labor. So now they don't have labor, and capital, which they're getting all the capital they want. But the problem is so people who are talking about capitalism, socialism, or whatever. When I was talking about a basic income is, so Reagan. Let's go back to Reagan, because I remember Reagan really well. Yeah, the Reagan era, I was a college student, and they were talking to us at this conservative Christian college about supply-side economics, and that was kind of developed by an economist named Milton Friedman. And he said, deregulate things and make sure you give money to the producers and the job growers. But people who create jobs. But he also said, make sure you have a basic income, or he wanted to do that mechanism of a negative income tax to make sure people don't drop below a certain level of their basic needs, because you want to make sure people are healthy and have a car and a suit and whatever they needed to do with their job. If you let them go all the way down and out, they can't participate in it anymore. They ignored what he said on that part. And went with let's put all this money at the top, in which we did that, right, in the tax cut with they didn't since Reagan. That's what the Republicans and capitalism is. Yeah, give us money. Well, here's the thing. You didn't give enough money to the customer. So the current response to the COVID thing economically is, give the money to the corporations, and they'll hire all the people back, and they'll carry the people while we're waiting this thing out. And what the basic income people is, don't have so many middlemen. Do a direct cash transfer to maintain a certain level. But right now, you can scale that up, and each household gets some. And now you've capitalized the demand side. It doesn't do any good to produce a bunch of stuff if people can't buy it. That's demand side economics. If you don't make sure that people can get what they need to stay solvent, then you're not going to have a customer anymore. It's not going to work. And that's one of the big things breaking down in the situation, is you've made people less resilient, and instead of helping them be more resilient.
Well, I don't understand the logic for the bazillionaires. How are they going to sustain their pyramid without a base? And that's why the basic minimum income, that's basically the basic minimum need society, is you need to have a strong population that can buy your goods and services. And so you go back to Model T Fords, when, oh boy, something's on fire. Hold on. Oh my God, Sash. Oh, but my eyes are burning. Oh, open the door. Oh, yeah, I don't worry about it. Can't see. Nothing to worry about.
Hey, the world is on fire. Yeah, then there's those kind of things. Yeah, we have those too.
Yeah, those kind of things, yeah. My husband's burning down the house while I'm on the radio. Okay, so anyway, what they did for, yeah, I was going to say to him, I need some food when we get down here. Okay, I'm turning on the fan. Woo! Yeah, funny. Okay, so Henry Ford, I want to remember my story. He said, when I wanted to make all these Model T Fords, it was like $900. That was a lot of money for people back then. So he said I gave him a raise, and I hired them all. So he made his own customer base. So everybody working in the company wanted their own cars, and so he had thousands of employees, and that was the beginning of the Model T Ford.
Yeah, so they could buy a car. Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, that's what he realized, that he needed to make sure the workers could buy the thing he was selling, and if his own workers couldn't buy it, then it wasn't going to be a flop. And there was a later corollary to that. There was a gentleman who went to Japan, started robotizing the factories, and the small cars were beating the big American gas guzzler cars in the 70s, the oil embargo thing under Jimmy Carter. And so this executive was visiting. He was being shown around the plant, and he got all the, they were robotizing things and using robot arms to weld things and everything, and replacing workers. And he goes, well, that's cool, except how are you going to get the robots to buy the cars? That's a big deal for us. We have a lot of automation going on, right? And Andrew Yang, the Democratic candidate for the presidential candidate, I'll get it right, running for president under the Democratic batch of guys and gals we had, right? And that's what he was saying, is that he had a chance to talk to all these guys making, that are making the technology. It literally, every tech guru that he talked to, all the top ones have come out in favor of basic income, because they said they're watching what's being developed. So one of the big factors here is we've got 4 million people, I don't know what this number is, people that have filed jobs claims. A lot of them are not, they're not going to have a job anymore, because if corporations do what a corporation does, they are going to automate. Because if you have a supply line, or if you have a assembly line, and there's a human in part of it, right? And that human can't come to work because they're sick, or that human, they don't have enough PPE for their workers, or everyone in the plant gets sick, and you have there's a technology somewhere to automate that station or that assembly line, so you can keep making stuff and meeting the demand, they're going to do it. Now, that's terrible.
It's going to be a couple of years, and they're going to automate things, and they're going to realize we don't need as many people. And that might be why, if you look at the whole scale, why they're depopulating. You don't need as many people to maintain. Who's getting maintained at the top, right? It's some rich fat cat. It's the Bezos. So somebody has calculated they can do charts and scales, and they can determine what is the viable population that we need, the absolute minimum, to maintain the society in the scale that they want it. And that's an unknown for me, but somebody has already calculated this out, what they want, how many people they want, what this will look like.
Well, assuming humans are just units in a production line. They're just units. They're just like biological robots that they're supposed to do what they're told, and that's it. That's the assumption. My counter to that thinking This goes back to this concept of the overfunction situation, is that if we have 7.5, and I first of all, let's start with a corollary of an idea. So there's a philosophical idea of how to run a society. And somebody comes up with sort of a utopia vision of how to do that, like an Adolf Hitler type. My belief is that if your utopia requires that a chunk of people have to die, then your vision is bankrupt. It's morally bankrupt. It's biologically bankrupt. It's bankrupt.
Right.
It's not going to, because life is, what's an economy for? Is the economy for someone to make money on their balance sheet? Or is an economy supposed to be taking care of all of us? And if an economy does that at the expense of the environment, it's like we're back to that thing that we talked about a few weeks ago of the agreement. We're supposed to take care of everybody, each other, every individual, every person, and we're supposed to be responsible towards family. If you don't do that, then you're an invasive species, and nature might just decide to do something about it, you know? But I think if we have 7.5 billion people on this planet, then why do we have so many people? Is because maybe our species needs that right now, or that's our destiny. I'm not a person that believes in quote-unquote overpopulation, because I have driven across this country and back, and if you've been to Nevada and Utah and large parts of China, as big as it is and how many people there are, they're all concentrated in cities. There's plenty here, or there's plenty we want to make sure we're worried about population and people being able to raise kids. We're not giving them the means to control that either. So the thing is I don't agree with someone needs to die in order for everything to be okay. This is something that I never thought I'd hear the Republican leadership saying, we've got to get this economy going, and a few people will die, and that's too bad. But that's like, really, that's not talking about them. They're not thinking of themselves. They're thinking of you and me and grandma and kids and anyone vulnerable. Right. And we're all vulnerable at times in our lives. We're all vulnerable as babies. We're all vulnerable as with the illnesses. We're all in that. And I just don't agree with that. I don't agree with a utopia that requires some people, sucks to be you. I think
that's
something else
go to the ET level. We're all valuable. Mm-hmm. Everybody is valuable. If you think in terms of we're outside of this closed system, but we can go to other planets. Like, hey, we might not need that many engineers in this side of the planet. We'll go to the other side of the planet. Okay, so maybe we need an engineer on Mars. So everybody's valuable. We can be trained in a million different occupations. We can change in the course of one lifetime. We can, if we were to expand our lifetime so that we wouldn't die and lose the wisdom. Look at all the accumulated wisdom that has perished because we had this belief system that we had to die at a certain age. Imagine if we had, Tesla still alive. How far could we go as a civilization if our genius wouldn't age and die, but it could continue to train subsequent generations? And so I reach for a Star Trekian vision, actually beyond Star Trek, because Star Trek became too much Star Wars, and I thought that was sad.
I agree with you.
It get hijacked.
I did too. Yeah, the original idea. It's like I like Star Trek, but minus maybe Klingons and Romulans and stuff. Killing each other. I guess they were trying to reflect back the human condition, but this is where we're at as a society. But I think all of what we are is going to the overfunction, and this we're going to wipe everybody out thing is an idea going back to the human population overfunction. Now, that being the case, it means that we have a threat. We have a threat to the population. We have a threat to the species. We have a threat of how we're doing things economically. Economically, we have a threat to how we're doing things in health. We're having a threat to how we have treated the environment. And there's going to be, and I've been feeling this, there's going to be some kind of response, some kind of natural response. And one of those things is when it was very hard to tell people, hey, these people have these intentions, people are like, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist, here's your tinfoil hat or whatever. Now it doesn't sound so far-fetched that someone has those intentions. I think, yes, they have those intentions. Let's do this thing and wipe all these people out, and they don't have a problem with it because they have no conscience. But
right.
I
that's
don't
why
think
I like what
that
Cuomo
they're going to
said.
win the day. What?
Cuomo said, no, we're not killing Grandma. No, we're not killing, your mother or your sister or your brother. We're not killing anybody. We may lose people but we're going to do everything we can every day. And at the end of the day, we're going to know we fought the hard fight and we did everything we could to save everybody. And so if somebody died, it's because it was beyond our means. We didn't have whatever, but we're going to keep going. And everybody, we're going to do what we can to save everybody. Because that's what the attitude was. Those right-winger, born-again Christians were saying, well, I think if you're old, you should just sacrifice yourself. You go out and work, you get exposed, and let the people that are healthy, survive so we can continue and the economy continues. And it's like, what? I'm sorry.
Yeah, but these guys used to pretend they were pro-life, and look at that, Now I know that they said that, and I know they don't mean that, because in processing leaving that situation, I realized that they were hypocritical in that regard. If they didn't care if ministers and priests were hurting children, if they didn't care that women were getting beat and what was happening there, if they didn't care about their employees, if they didn't, because I watched all of this, is the reality of when you're dealing with someone with that hierarchical mindset of what they do versus what they claim is quite a bit of difference. So I think that's, I really appreciate Governor Cuomo for having that attitude. That's Brett and I use an Irish term. An Irish chieftain was called the Dagda. He was the father of the whole tribe. He was acting in a fatherly, making sure everybody's okay kind of way versus some kind of potentate that got there because his daddy was the king or whatever. Didn't care. There's a difference between a leader who's a real leader. He's going to care about every single person in his realm versus somebody who is just out for themselves. And that's being very much revealed, those baseline attitudes. And that's another part of this apocalypse shows. You're talking about the apocalypse shows. That's the revealing. It's very revealing. It's like, oh, that's what you really think? That's what you really believe. You really believe that that's so. It's like that's showing that that's what it's been like all the time. That's the normal we don't want to go back to. We don't want to go, we don't want to, because that's how we got in the situation in the first place. People who don't care about other people, they're narcissistic, they're selfish, is why, we're having the breakages in our society, is because it did not benefit them to make sure we had masks and gloves in that stockpile. It did not benefit them to make sure that everyone had health care. It does not benefit for them to have everyone employed or making sure that they're okay. It did not benefit them there, and they had the ability to push everyone around and control everything, and we're seeing the results. And it's mark it well. Remember this. When it's time to start rebuilding things, keep in mind who we don't want to, and we got them all on the internet now, right? Remember what they said about other people, and that with what they didn't care, and it's like it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't make sense from our perspective if you're a normal person.
Ultimately, the purpose of this game that's going on with the virus wars, whatever, is to define who you are in the continuum. Who are you? How do you respond in the midst of a disaster? So there was this ET guy that came to a conference that I was at. He was talking to Linda Bolton Howe, and he said that he was put into a test by the extraterrestrials, and they put him in a room, and it was a circular room. It had a big, not a vat, but a big barrel in the middle of the room, And there were two children. He didn't know them. They were strangers, two children, but they were young. They were adolescents. They were not toddlers, but a little bit older. And suddenly this door opens on the one end. There was no doors anywhere, but suddenly a door opens. It emerges out of the wall, and this snarling beast comes and starts chasing them around. And so he ended up grabbing each child and got them into the barrel so they were safe, and they turned around and faced the monster. And then the game was over, right? So he had made the right choices. He had chosen to sacrifice himself rather than let these children, even though he didn't know them, right? Didn't know them. They weren't relatives, didn't know them. So this is what this virus is. How do you behave? Do you sacrifice people you don't know, or do you think about people and, like, how can I help them? How can I help the old couple down the street? They don't have a car and they can't get their groceries, and it's high risk for them to go down into the city, right? So do people think that way? No, I think had this been the 50s or 60s, we'd see a lot more of it because we did know our neighbors. But this is a society that's been intentionally isolated, and, you know, most of us don't know who lives next door. We don't know their names. We don't know their kids' names. We don't know their dog's name. But maybe this is an opportunity to finally be in touch with each other and be more. I don't know how this is going to pan out. I'm not there to fly on the wall in each situation, but all I can do is be kind.
Well, if I don't know either, and I wouldn't predict that. I would just go back to this crisis, which has both the danger, obviously, and the opportunity that we wouldn't have had if you're not aware. Like, you and I have tried to make ourselves as aware as we can about what's going on. This is, I keep trying to keep in mind, this is all brand new for a lot of people. They've never had to confront this, except that now all of a sudden the wolf is at everybody's door. And they have this term in the basic income movement called precariat. And precariat is another one of those mashup words. It's the proletariat, or, regular normal people, and precariousness. It's and the fellow who coined the term, I always say this, his name is Guy Standing, and that is his real name, Last Guy Standing, and he's a British economist, and you might want to have people look that up because he's really an interesting fellow and has actually experimented with real-world experiments of the basic income with interesting results, good results. And he made up this word, precariat. Well, there's always been a group of us. There's a growing group of us, and he wrote a book about this is growing. But all of a sudden, we're all in the precariat, pretty much, except for maybe some people hold up when they're some billionaire person, We're all the precariat now. Our existence has been made precarious by basically giving up our control of things and what's in our purview to this 1%. But I think that they're finding out they're not as powerful as they thought. So one of the reasons why they want us to go back to work so quick is because of the fact that they're not making money. They're losing out. Now, this is now affecting them. Them having a company that they, unless you're Jeff Bezos, is sort of a Teflon billionaire, but he's making more money because of this, but he's also been shortcutting his workers, and there's, he's been undercutting their ability to strike or have any kind of labor negotiations. And, that's creating a problem. They don't have PPE, protective equipment, any more than the medical people, and our supply chain people need to have everything they can get right now. And we're remembering how heroic a worker is, who workers are, people who take care of us, who do drive trucks, and people who work at warehouses and grocery stores and stuff. We're being reminded how important we are to each other, and even if you're just staying home, you're doing something to help the situation. And I know that there's a lot of people who feel very differently. I think there's a lot of people who feel differently than what I'm saying in the ufology realm of things. They're more on the right side of, they're going to take over. And everything they're saying I've heard since I was 5. Everything that they're saying about, martial law and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't think that's not true either, in a sense. But I don't think that's the whole story. I when I finally said, okay, I'm gonna okay, so if they're gonna take over tomorrow and I'm 5 and I'm 12 years of age and I'm still alive, what's keeping them from doing that? What's the answer to that? What's going on that's preventing them to achieving those goals? Because those goals were on the table in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. They weren't. This is not stuff that they thought of yesterday.
We got vaccines when we were born. We got vaccines when we went to school. We get vaccinated. We get every time there's a needle that penetrates our skin, they can put a vaccine in. When they take blood, when they give you a shot, when you in the hospital and intravenous, they put it in our chemtrails. We breathe it in. Anything that they wanted to do, they could already.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I'm not saying they're not doing that. But
now I'm not sure what to do when they show up with the vaccine for this one or the next one. There's some level. It's like, well, if you're going to want to travel and leave your little town, they might, I don't know, do they have enough people to police us all like that? I guess they have drones. Apparently they have 50 billion drones out. So let's just say Karen can't leave where she lives now without going past the drone, which will say, where's your proof of your vaccination for COVID-19? You want to go out and
how would that
prove?
Okay, so they do that. That's a thing. Whatever, it's done. It's done on other planets. It's been done. If you ever watched *Handmaid's Tale* by Margaret Atwood when she wrote that book and the subsequent TV show, that literally everything in that show, she made sure it was something that had happened at one point. Show your ID, your hyper control of the population, all of that. Is that I'm not saying that is not the intention. I'm not saying some of that bullshit won't happen, all of that kind of stuff. But the thing is there's something else going on. And I think it's the human spirit altogether. I think it's nature. Right. I think it's who we are naturally. I think it's our higher selves is going to have a voice in that too. Our collective selves and the love we have for each other. That's what I've been trying to focus on when I got to that breaking point in fear, is I started looking at what's keeping them from getting on with the program. All of these things that they would be doing, some form or fashion of it was done in Nazi Germany, and Nazi Germany fell, or was done in China, communist China, or was done in Russia. I mean, something comes up on the other side, probably more powerful, and it has very much to do with who we are at the deepest level and who we are in connection with one another. And also, the people who do those things. So the ones who, who automate things, the ones that fly the drones, etc. Is every single one of them going to be on board with this or not? And there's so many historical evidence of people who only go so far with that, and then they go, wait a minute, this is not what we thought it would be, and this is not. By the way, they have to benefit the people that they're doing that. If we're not benefiting from whatever harebrained way they want to organize things, so they want to have a massive control system of everybody, but they don't want to make sure we have what we need. It doesn't work that way. It's not going to work. People are going to resent that. If you're going to have Rome, imperial Rome, you better damn have bread and circuses. As soon as they don't have the bread and circuses, they're not down with your imperial Rome anymore. So it's an old basic concept. And I just realized that whatever level they're going to next is just variations on the same kind of theme. Where which way is humanity going to go? And it just seems to always be back and forth with this ultimate freedom or ultimate tyranny kind of motif. And that might be the big lesson we're trying to learn.
And that's kind of where I go to as well. It's like no matter where you go, they need us as much as we need them, right? So they're not going to – they need us to have free will. They need us to be able to make choices. They can't lock it down because – and that's what the ET say. It's like the reason why humans are so valuable is because we have imaginations. We are able to diversify creation. And so one of my guests said, yeah, the ETs, many of the species, they'll make interstellar travel, right? But once they make it, they're done. They don't know how to do what humans do. Humans go, well, I'm going to make one now in blue, and I'm going to make one and we're going to change the wing here. So humans are so creative. We continue to evolve something that the ETs, they just get to make it and it's practical, but if you check back, 50,000 years later, they're still the same model, right? So that's why they're like humans. And I think that's why they'll never lock us down so tight that we won't be able to image anything, create anything, evolve, grow. And I think that's also the source. The reason why life is created in the first place is to go forth, be fruitful, multiply, diversify, and
what if
something? Yeah.
The creator question is what if? What if I did this? What if I did that? That's the basis of all creativity is imagining in your mind another way and then trying it.
Right.
And it is a great gift. It also means that a little bit of chaos slips in. We get a kind of a creative dissatisfaction, like, okay, well, yeah, I practice this way, but what if I'm an artist, so I do that all the time. Oh, I'm going to make this kind of thing, and that was cool. Like lately, I've been these masks. I've been making these medical masks, and I kind of went down one trail of it, and then I went out and looked at the way other people were doing it, and I found out very quickly the way I was making it was requiring the use of bias tape, and all of a sudden you can't get any bias tape to save your soul right now. There's literally a thing called a million mask mayday, and there's lots of people, and what's nice about that is really you can do something about what this crazy virus can actually help. But I ran out of the certain types of materials, so I went, oh, well, how do we do it differently? And so I watched a bunch of videos of how other people have done the same thing. And I think if we have to wear masks, I think Russell Bringer actually said that if we wear masks long enough, this becomes like a thing that we have to do for a while. They're going to get real fancy looking. They're going to be all like styling. You're going to have one to match your outfit. And, it's because we have a creative dissatisfaction. And, after I did about, 20 of these things, I went, oh, well, first of all, I was running out of things, of supplies that are hard to get. And then second of all, I don't know, I'm sick of this material. I want to try something else. Creative dissatisfaction will also cause an intricate system of control to break down too, because there'll be this sort of dissatisfaction with that. So let's try this. So I realized that whatever humans were working on the control system are the same schmucks that are working on to fix everything. We're all kind of working through materiality, and they have just the same problems that we do, in that regard, with a different intent. Mm-hmm. But just as someone can decide for whatever reason one day that maybe hyper control and micromanagement is a good idea, and they'll go after help, on that path. I think just as soon as a person who's been working in the system, as A.R. Borden was, will go, oh, hell no, this isn't going to work, and we'll go off in the other direction. So we trade soldiers between the camps, kind of, across the imaginary line, a little bit. So that's a creative dissatisfaction that humans will give themselves. And so, like you said, what if I did the wing differently? What if it came in this color? What if I used this material? That is a gift that we have. And I hope, we're talking about a lot of dire stuff, but I hope people get kind of a positive feeling from what we're saying, because this could be this whole thing that we've done as humanity to allow this virus and to kind of creatively shake everything up, create the opportunity to do things differently, to do things better. We probably will not be shaking hands, but, some people bump the elbows, and I'm like, I'm going to do this Spock salute, I think, because I always thought that was cool anyway, live long and prosper. That's a nice thing to say to people right now, where there's a virus and economic challenges. Live long and maybe that's where the Vulcans got it from. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But,
it sounds good.
I forgot to check with the Star Trek canon to see if the Vulcans had a pandemic. That would explain a lot right there.
That would, history,
then there's fake history.
Well, Fauci said there's no way we're ever going to be shaking hands again, never. He goes, nope, don't ever do that again. Now I'm trying to find the board, what time we're ending here. I think we're running out of time pretty soon here. I've lost my board. Okay.
That's all right. We'll wing it like we do a lot. We'll just wing it.
Yeah.
That's what everyone's doing, is winging it.
We're winging it. I lost the board somewhere in time. Must have closed it. Anyway, we are running out of time, so I wanted to invite you to, here it is, here's the board. I want you to invite you to say what you want to say before we run out of time. And so did we cover everything that we wanted to cover? Well, we don't have to do it all in one show. That's what's magical about being on Blog Talk. We can just do another one.
Right.
Do one tomorrow.
What's kind of fun, Janet, is you and I we've worked together over the years. We've tried to be so professional as far as like sound quality. And I have to shoo my dogs into another room so they don't bark and everything. And I think I was talking to you on her show when a chicken started crowing one time. It was really funny what's happened over there. Now all of a sudden all these super professional, like, CNN people and MSNBC people are all in their library, and the kids are coming in and the cat's meowing. And it's kind of like they all joined our sort of production level. It's kind of been funny to watch of how this has been a great equalizer in media as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm in the jungle, and we get roosters that crow, and I had my 20-year-old cat that used to meow, and I have this younger cat, and she likes socks, and she gets socks, and she goes meow. She's like in bliss when she gets a sock. And then, of course, Sasha just tried to burn down the house.
Right, exactly.
There's always something here. Yeah.
Yeah, this guy was like doing a report, and his kids ran in, and the dog jumped on his lap, and I mean it's interesting. So we don't have to be so. Maybe we don't have to be so uptight about how we communicate in things too. Like it all has to be perfect and everything. It's like we're going to the super casual for a while, and I've heard people say that after they've been home for a while and they're working in their PJs and stuff, that women don't have, some of them don't want to ever have to wear a bra again. Some people don't want to have to wear pants again. I mean, so it might be an interesting sociologically down the road of, how we created this perception of perfection that wasn't real either, but it was a lot of look-goodism. And maybe that's going to be one of the things that comes out. On the other hand, people will want to have their gatherings be more formal, maybe. I don't know, but it's kind of we're forced into a strange social experiment, that's for sure. And almost every area is there's not any area that's not touched. Yeah.
There was this one star, I don't know who it was, one of the young ones. I don't know all their names, but anyway, she was on one of the Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon or whatever. Anyway, they're calling into each other, and they're at their home, and he's there. What do you have on? She goes, well, I discovered these T-shirts, pajamas, and they're real long, and they have, hers had a bunch of cartoonish-like characters in it, and she said, so I went on Amazon, and I ordered a bunch of them because I'm going to be home for a while, and I just thought I'd get a bunch of these T-shirts, and she said it hasn't come yet, so I'm wearing this same one for a week and waiting for the other one so I can switch out. And then she would say, yeah, I took off my daytime pajamas to put on my nighttime pajamas. So a lot of people are wearing other pajamas. And then this one guy had a suit top on, and he forgot. And he got up and he had his boxer shorts on. It was hilarious. So we're moving past the structures that we've had for a long time. So I think that's going to be interesting to see. Now I've always been doing that. I don't have a camera, so I just I'm bad here in the jungle. I'm bad. Anyway, there was something I was going to say, but I think we're getting out of time here. So let's begin to wrap this up. So let me look at
let me say real quick. You said, what do I want to promote? We're still going to need masks. And Million Mask Mayday New Mexico is where I put a bunch of videos, just a Facebook page, and I have some of those instructions in Spanish too, because I'm in New Mexico. And so if people want to check that out, that's going to be continuing to be a thing. It's really important that people learn how to make them correctly, how to wear them correctly, take them on and off correctly. That's going to be a learning curve as well of using masks. And that,
or video on how you make it. Maybe you can do a video and instruct people. Yeah,
no, I haven't yet. I just put videos by other people. Yeah, you gotta not be. You don't want to say don't touch your face and then mess around with a mask. So make sure a mask fits well. Make sure you have microfiltration. So if you have a cloth mask, put a woven mask. That's not going to help you because the virus is smaller than it can go in between the weaving area. So put some Kleenex in it. So I made ones with a pocket, so you could put Kleenex in it, or you could put microfiltration is like a Walmart cloth bag. Is that kind of material?
So Kleenex is sufficient. So Kleenex is sufficient.
Not woven.
You have to use.
It's not woven. Kleenex, toilet paper, a coffee filter.
So do you put
you want
one layer? Do you put one layer or two layers? How many layers? Say I took one Kleenex.
I have an outer woven layer. I put on the inside. I put a microfiltration material, so some Walmart cloth bags, and then I have a pocket in between those two layers that I was putting a coffee filter, and that would be like if you're around someone who's actively sick. So the micro layers and the woven layers is okay. You still have to socially. I tell people it's not a force field. You still have to socially distance.
Yeah, that's what I think.
And not mess with your face. Yeah, make sure that your mask is comfortable, so you're not touching your face trying to fiddle with it. That's another thing.
Right.
And
some people,
and also people
go in with a mask and they think they're invincible, like I'm Superman and I've got my force field. Yeah.
No.
What
not at all.
And also, do?
It's just trying to keep the droplets off you. You could get a little bit more filtration with the non-woven materials, help with a little bit more smaller particles, and this thing is super tiny. You still don't want to touch your face. You still want to wash your hands or wear gloves. If you take your gloves off, you want to take your gloves off and wash your hands. I mean, you really got to. There's one thing that people are doing.
Masks?
Yeah, the masks I have, you can wash. Yeah, I've been washing them, and then also I hit them with some kind of disinfectant, like I've got alcohol in a spray bottle, and also I'm running out of that, so I've got a solution of hydrogen peroxide solution.
Before you come in the house. What about?
Oh, I do that.
I heard that you should take your clothes off and put it in a separate bag and.
Yeah, we have a clean room. All of our
frequently.
Our mail. Yeah, we took our utility room since the easiest to clean, and we made kind of a clean room. So since we haven't been able to get shopping, we get boxes in, and they go into the clean room, and then we have like the washer area you could put the box down, and then Brett does this for me. So he wears gloves and he sprays it and cleans it and wipes it down and takes stuff out of the box and wipes down the outside of it. We have I call it mail jail. Mail jail is where our mail goes into a box, and we wait on it a couple of days, so we don't, there's different methodologies, and it's important to ramp it up a level, because when we have the outbreak at a higher level now, it's important to kind of it's a good time to be OCD, really, actually. I think it's probably the best time to be OCD. But just
and what about taking off your shoes? I heard that you take off your shoes.
We don't leave our shoes outside because we have tarantulas. So, we take our shoes off and put them in sort of the same spot. And just, when we go outside, then we put those shoes on. So, we can't leave our shoes outside like some people do, or something might crawl in them. So, any of those kinds of things that you do, and just flatten, reduce. If you think of Russian roulette, is that there's one bullet in the chamber and you're going to shoot it 6 times, then you want to think in terms of not going out time. If you have 7 times you go click, 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 you got a problem, or 6 times you go click, click, click. Just reduce the amount of things that you do. Try to get all your errands run in one fell swoop. I mean, there's all that kind of advice. Definitely do it. We've had people really disregard social distancing, and we've got people that we know. We're just like that. No.
We're almost out of time. Is this a website? Is this a website or something? Is this a
No. These are all different. YouTube has a lot of stuff. YouTube has a lot of stuff on this. And Million Mask Mayday is the one for the masks.
Million Mask Mayday, and that's not a website, but that's a movement.
YouTube, yes, a movement on YouTube.
Million Mask Movement Mayday. Okay, well, we're out of time now. We've got just a couple seconds, so I want to thank everybody. I'm Janet Kara Lessin, and this has been Karen Christine Patrick, and we'll be back in a few days, maybe next week again. And if you have anything you want us to say, email us aquarianradio@gmail.com, and we'll take your suggestions and do a show. Thank you for listening. Love and blessings, Dan. Aloha.
Live long and prosper.
We're off the air. Okay, cool. Great show.
Good.
We had a guest or something.